Welcome to History Date Night, a World War II podcast covering the Second World War in chronological order, from the opening shots to final victory. I'm Justin, and joining me is my wife and co-host, Jenny. Together we explore the people, battles, and turning points that shape the deadliest conflict in human history, one date at a time. On this episode,
and move to a secret location for safekeeping.
Pretty good haul for a country without many tanks.
A discovery that will eventually revolutionize archaeology. Welcome back to History Date Night. I'm Jenny. Last episode, the Manstein Plan was formally incorporated into German invasion planning. A physicist operated a cavity magnetron held together with sealing wax and pennies. Falkenhorst planned Norway's invasion from a tourist guide in one afternoon. And 588 German sailors died to their own aircraft and their own mines on a mission to sink fishing trawlers. This episode, February 23rd through 29th. It's a leap year. London finally gets something to cheer about. Finland receives peace terms it knows it cannot reject. The largest ship in the world slips out of a Scottish shipyard on a spring tide bound for New York under false pretenses. And on the last day of the month, Hollywood hands out its awards while someone quietly buys the wreck of the Graf Spee.
I'm Justin. This week also has Jean-Paul Sartre, writing in his diary about the sergeant who still thinks England will back down. Sweden's actual cold-blooded reason for refusing to help Finland exposed in a newspaper, the only Finnish tank attack of the entire Winter War, Sumner Wells finding Mussolini looking old and tired, and carbon-14 being discovered at Berkeley while all of this is happening. Let's get into it. February 23rd in London. 700 officers and men of HMS Exeter and HMS Ajax march from the Strand through cheering crowds to the Guildhall, the medieval hall in the heart of the City of London, the historic center of city government where Lord Mayors have hosted state occasions for 600 years. The Lord Mayor is giving a luncheon and the streets are packed.
This is the first major public celebration Britain has had since the war began. The Battle of the River Plate gave Britain a story it could celebrate. A German pocket battleship, the most hunted ship in the Atlantic, fought by 3 smaller cruisers to a standstill and then driven into a neutral harbor where it destroyed itself. In the aftermath of the battle, Exeter lost 61 men and was so badly damaged she had to be escorted to the Falklands for emergency repairs. Ajax lost 2 turrets. Both ships came home.
Britain has been at war for nearly 6 months, and things haven't been looking up for Britain so far. The Western Front is silent. France's soldiers have low morale, the news from Finland is increasingly grim, and German propaganda often seems more dynamic and effective than Britain's more restrained messaging. Now, finally, in late February, London streets are full of people who came out because a ship came home. The hunger for good news is palpable, and this is the best news the war has produced so far.
Also, on February 23rd, in Nuremberg, the southern German city that serves as the ceremonial heart of National Socialism, where the great party rallies were held, where the racial laws were promulgated. The imperial regalia of the Holy Roman Empire, the crown, the orb, the scepter, the sacred lance, artifacts that have survived for over 1,000 years and were considered among the most potent symbols of European Christian civilization, are quietly removed from display and moved to a secret location for safekeeping. Germany is hiding history's crown jewels because it is afraid that bombs might begin to fall.
Also on February 23rd in Moscow, the Soviet government sends its final peace terms to Finland through Swedish intermediaries. Their terms have grown significantly since October. The USSR demands the entire Karelian Isthmus, the narrow land bridge connecting Finland to Russia, including the city of Viipuri, Finland's second largest city, a 30-year lease on the Hanko Peninsula at the southwestern tip of Finland, a site that the Finns had called a pistol aimed at Helsinki. The USSR also wants all the land surrounding Lake Ladoga and a mutual assistance treaty. In exchange, the Soviets will evacuate the territory that they've seized around Petsamo in the far north.
These are crushing terms. They represent everything Finland fought to prevent. Viipuri is not a minor provincial city. It is Finland's second city, a major industrial and cultural center with a population of roughly 80,000. The Karelian Isthmus is the natural defensive barrier between Finland and the Soviet Union. Surrendering the Mannerheim Line's territory means surrendering the geography that makes a future defensive possible. The Henkel base is 80 miles from Helsinki, with guns that can cover the approaches to the capital. These terms amount to Finland becoming strategically indefensible.
Finland has until March 1st to respond. The Finnish cabinet gathers in Helsinki. The majority agrees peace must be made. There is no alternative. The British are offering 20,000 men if Finland requests them by March 5th, and the French are being even more emphatic. But Sweden has ruled out allowing Allied troops to cross its territory, and Norway has done the same. The Allied troops cannot reach Finland, and the offer is meaningless, and the Finnish government knows it.
This brings us to Sweden's real position, which is considerably more calculated than the stated neutrality. A Swedish newspaper breaks a story this week. Väinö Tanner's trip to Stockholm and the explicit refusal of Finnish requests have been leaked. And the reason Sweden refused, the actual strategic logic rather than the public justification, becomes clear. Sweden's calculation is this: if Finland fights on and loses, Sweden's eastern border is the Soviet Union with no buffer. If Finland is forced to make a humiliating peace, Finland survives as an independent state and serves as an armed buffer between Sweden and the Soviet giant. The last thing Sweden wanted was to encourage Finnish resistance, because Finnish resistance might bring the war to Sweden's doorstep. None of the Swedish diplomats involved found this easy to stomach, but it was the logic and it was cold-blooded in the extreme.
King Gustav of Sweden, responding to public outrage, expresses his regret that Sweden cannot send military aid, but explains that doing so risks dragging Sweden into one or both of the current European wars. The popular pressure for Swedish intervention largely dissolves after the king speaks. Finland will face the next weeks without Swedish military. German Foreign Office representatives quietly offer to mediate peace talks and then withdraw the offer, because the Norway campaign is coming and Germany doesn't want to do anything that disrupts its relationship with the Soviet Union before then.
The fighting continues while diplomacy churns. February 26th brings the only Finnish armored operation of the entire Winter War. 6 Vickers Mark E light tanks, older designs that are underpowered and badly outmatched, attack Soviet positions at the village of Hankaniemi, about 10 kilometers southeast of Viipuri. The attack fails to materially affect the Soviet advance. This is effectively Finland's only armored reserve, expended in a single failed attack. Finland will fight the rest of the Winter War just without tanks. February 24th, Berlin. The revised OKW directive formally incorporates the Ardennes-centered concept that has become known as the Manstein Plan. The invasion of France will proceed through the Ardennes, crossing the Meuse near Sedan and driving to the English Channel coast. The same day, Hitler gives approval to detailed invasion plans for France and the Low Countries. The same day, Falkenhorst's Norway invasion plan receives Hitler's formal approval. Hitler is now committed simultaneously to operations against Norway, Denmark, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The phony war has roughly 6 weeks left.
February 24th also sees the Hawker Typhoon make its first flight from Hucklecote, Gloucestershire, a factory airfield outside Gloucester in the English Midlands. The Typhoon is a large, powerful fighter bomber that will eventually become one of the most effective Allied ground attack aircraft of the Western European campaign. It is capable of carrying rockets and bombs against German armor and supply lines. In February 1940, it is just a prototype, but the first flight is successful. This is one of several British aircraft in development that will impact the war tremendously.
February 26th, in Clydebank, a shipbuilding town on the River Clyde just west of Glasgow in Scotland, home to some of the greatest shipyards in the world. The RMS Queen Elizabeth, the largest ocean liner ever built, slips her moorings on one of only 2 spring tides high enough to carry her 87,673 tons, safely down the river and out to sea. She is manned by a skeleton crew. She is being fitted out, not completed. She is equipped with a degaussing cable to neutralize magnetic mines, and her stated destination, according to the false intelligence carefully planted by British authorities, is Southampton on England's southern coast.
But the Queen Elizabeth is not going to Southampton. Her actual destination is New York, where she will receive her final fitting before the war makes that impossible. Germany knows the Queen Elizabeth is launching, and German agents would love to know where she is with the intention of sinking the largest ship in the world for a propaganda victory. But Britain has generated enough false intelligence to make them look in the wrong place. The largest ship in the world slips quietly out of a Scottish shipyard on a false itinerary bound for America. The Queen Elizabeth will eventually carry up to 15,000 troops per voyage, which will be essential to moving American and Commonwealth forces across the Atlantic once the United States enters the war. But all of that is in the future. Right now, she is an enormous, not yet finished ship making her first secret crossing under a skeleton crew in winter seas.
February 26th, in Rome. Summer Wells, the American Undersecretary of State dispatched by Roosevelt on a fact-finding tour of European capitals, sits down with Count Galeazzo Ciano, Italy's foreign minister, and then with Benito Mussolini himself. Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law, a man of considerable personal vanity and political intelligence, is explicitly hostile to Germany. He makes no attempt to conceal his disdain for the country that Italy is nominally allied with.
Mussolini is something else. Wells later recounts being profoundly shocked at his appearance. The newsreels and photographs of Mussolini show a barrel-chested, vital, theatrical figure with his chin thrust forward, eyes blazing, the performance of an absolute power. What Wells encounters is a man who seems far older and more worn than the vigorous figure of the newsreels. Slow, tired, he describes Mussolini as looking his age. And Mussolini, in 1940, is 56 years old, not ancient, but worn by the compromises and miscalculations of the previous decade. Italy is not at war. Italy has not been at war since the campaign in Abyssinia, now Ethiopia, ended in 1936. And now Mussolini is trying to figure out which side of this new war will make Italy a great power.
Meanwhile, in France, Jean-Paul Sartre, a future philosopher and playwright, is serving as a meteorologist with the French army. On February 20th, he writes in his diary, quote, "The war machine is running in neutral. Only yesterday a sergeant was telling me, with a gleam of insane hope in his eyes, it'll all be arranged, England will climb down." End quote. The sergeant believes the war will somehow resolve itself without anyone having to fight, and the sergeant is not alone. French public morale at this point is characterized, depending on which source you read, as either muted resilience or quiet despair, with a tendency toward wishful thinking. The phony war is not just a military condition, but it's a psychological one too.
British Prime Minister Chamberlain gives an address in Birmingham on February 24th. This address is mainly meant for the United States and is broadcast to the U.S. In this address, he outlines British war aims, the independence of the Poles and Czechs, and, quote, tangible evidence to satisfy us that pledges and assurances, when they are given, will be fulfilled, end quote. He says Germany must take the next step and demonstrate it has abandoned the thesis that might is right. It is a dignified speech to an audience in America that mostly doesn't care to hear it. On the same day, Hitler tells Munich, "We cannot be defeated either economically or militarily." Quote, "The world may be full of devils, but we will succeed." End quote. Two different speeches in the same week show that this war is not yet close to being resolved with words.
February 29th, 1940. 1940 is a leap year. The day begins with Soviet troops crossing the frozen Gulf of Finland in an attempt to land west of Viipuri and surround it from the sea. They are defeated by Finnish defenders, capturing only a small island called Tikari. The frozen sea, which should give the Soviets an enormous advantage because you can drive armor across ice that no naval vessel can cross, is being defended by Finnish soldiers who know the coast, know the ice conditions, and have been fighting in frozen terrain for 3 months.
The same day, Finnish troops wipe out the East Lemedi Pocket, a Soviet force that has been surrounded for weeks in the forests north of Lake Ladoga. The final battle at 4 a.m. captures 71 tanks, 12 armored cars, 206 trucks, 70 machine guns, and quantities of artillery. Pretty good haul for a country without many tanks. Even as the peace negotiations begin and the main front retreats, Finland is still destroying surrounded Soviet forces in the wilderness. The Winter War has 12 days left, but no one knows that now.
In Berkeley, California, on February 27th, at the University of California's Radiation Laboratory, physicists Martin Kamen and Sam Rubin identify the radioactive isotope carbon-14, a discovery that will eventually revolutionize archaeology and our understanding of the ancient past.
On February 29th at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, the 12th Academy Awards are hosted by Bob Hope. His first time hosting, and the beginning of a tradition he will repeat 18 more times. Gone with the Wind wins 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. Vivien Leigh wins Best Actress. The Best Supporting Actress award goes to Hattie McDaniel for her role as Mammy, making her the first African American to win an Academy Award. She is seated at a separate table against the wall because the Ambassador Hotel's segregation policies. She accepts her award with dignity and grace and gives a speech that the Los Angeles Times describes as one of the most moving moments of the evening. But the LA Times has already printed the winners in its 8:45 edition, so that by the time of the announcement, most attendees accidentally already know the results.
The sealed envelope tradition, where the winners are unknown until the moment they're opened on stage, begins the following year, specifically because of the Times' premature publication. Academy Awards changes forever on February 29, 1940, for multiple reasons.
And in Uruguay, also on February 29th, the wreck of the Admiral Graf Spee is still sitting in the shallow waters of the Rio de la Plata, where she settled after being scuttled in December. On this day, this wreck is sold to a local company for scrap. What only becomes known later is that the local company is a front for the British Embassy. The salvage rights give British intelligence personnel access to the wreck for a very specific purpose, evaluating the Graf Spee's radar installation in more detail than the brief look they had before. The most hunted ship in the Atlantic is, in her final form, a British intelligence asset.
So, to conclude, London cheers the crews of HMS Exeter and Ajax through the streets to the Guildhall. Finland receives peace terms it knows it cannot refuse and has until March 1st to accept. The RMS Queen Elizabeth sails from Clydebank on a false passport. Sweden's real reason for abandoning Finland is exposed in a newspaper. Finland expends its only armored reserve in a single failed attack. The Manstein Plan is formally incorporated. Wells finds Mussolini looking old. Sartre's sergeant hopes England will back down. On Leap Day, Soviet troops are repulsed on the frozen Gulf of Finland. Carbon-14 is discovered in California. Hattie McDaniel becomes the first African American to win an Oscar in a segregated room. And the Graf Spee's wreck is sold to a British intelligence front that wants to look at a radar. Next episode, the Winter War comes closer to its conclusion. Well, thanks for joining us for episode 24 of History Date Night. We'll see you next time.
See you then.